Hi guys, and welcome back. I haven't been in touch for a while here, but I'm going to try to pick up the tutorial videos again. The first two that I had done were on this stocking, which is now finished. I just really had to get it done in time, and I just didn't have time to make the tutorial videos, but I am going to pick them back up. I just thought that I would show you the finished piece, since I had kind of started with this one. This is Partridge in a Pear Tree. And I'm really pleased with the way it came out. It's got lots of sparkly beads and sequins. The gold thread is always a challenge to work with, but it came out okay in most spots. And I'm really excited to give this one away for Christmas. So I'm going to pick up the tutorials with Wintry Wonderland Ornaments. These are pretty cute little ornaments, and I'm excited to get these done to put on our Christmas tree. So we're going to pick up, this first video is going to be on applique. So I've got, these ornaments are actually double-sided. So I've got the first side done. This is kind of our target that we're trying to achieve here. And I think the only thing I'm going to change for the next side is to add more white sequins around the edging. I think I could use a little more, and I have tons of extra, so I'm going to go ahead and put those on just to give it a little more sparkle, and then I'll make this the back side. So I've already got it cut out. So I've cut all these pieces, and these instructions are a little bit different in the sense that normally you would embroider, sequin, and then applique the piece to whatever you're appliquing onto. But in this case, the instructions say to applique it first. So applique the white piece down and then add the embroidery stitching, which is going to be back stitching for this one, and then add the sequins. And to be honest, because this white piece is so thin and flimsy, it actually is easier to do it that way this time. Normally I would recommend doing it normally, where you sequin, or embroider, sequin, and then applique, but in this case it works out. So we're going to add this back stitching right here. So in terms of reading the chart, I can see, if I look at this guide, this is kind of the key for this particular stitch. So then I go over to the stitch key, and I see that this is back stitch in dark periwinkle, and they want me to use 2 strands. So I use the loop start method. I'll show you that when we get started, but just that's how you read the key. So I'm going to get started with the applique. I'm just showing you quickly here. This is how I keep my thread sorted. And I always skip one because most of these don't require a full strand of floss. So once I've pulled like one strand out of a piece of floss, then I keep the one that's already started next to it. So that's what I usually do. It just keeps things more organized, and then I don't have to pull off the whole wad just to get that one piece to separate. So I've got my piece of white. You always want to applique with a floss color that matches the piece you're appliquing on. So if I can find the end here, doing everything through the camera. So you want to applique with one piece or one strand of floss. So I separate out one piece. You can just pull. Most of the time it comes right out. I'm going to thread my needle. I store my little needles, in case you haven't watched the earlier videos. I store them actually on a piece of felt, and that seems to be pretty handy. And then I usually tie 3 or 4 knots. You know, there are easier ways of doing this. So, step one of the applique is to line up your piece. So as you can see, on this piece, it's got little markings. So that's where you're going to line up the piece that goes on top of it, on those dashed lines. So, line this up. Sorts of crooked here. Okay. And make sure it's all lined up. And then I can start my applique. Many people use pins. I don't typically, unless they're really tiny pieces that I'm having a hard time holding on to. So I'll pick a spot to start, and it's usually in a corner. And because I know, normally I would add more stitches, and you'll see what I mean in a second. But because I know that I am embroidering over this, it's going to help to hold it down. So I'm not going to go too crazy with appliquing it on really snugly because I know this is going to help stabilize it. So when I applique, I usually pick the corners. I'm just going to add a stitch, get it to focus here. So you can see there's my first stitch. Do another one here. And I'm just grabbing the very edge, get this to focus, the very edge of the felt. And in this case I go all the way through because I'm only doing 2 layers. If you have something that's multiple layers that you're appliquing on, you wouldn't want to go all the way through. But in this case, I know nobody's going to see the back of this piece, so I'm really not too concerned with how the back looks. And I'm just going to keep going around and doing that for everything. And then for these little windows here, my suggestion, this worked pretty well with the last piece, I'm just going to do the 4 corners of this. Oops, see, I pulled it a little too tight there. You don't want to pull too tight, because if you pull really tight, it ends up denting your felt. You don't want that. So then I'm going to do the next corner. Again, not pulling too tight. Next corner. And I know that this is going to hold it down, so it doesn't have to be really secure. And then I'm going to continue on going around the outside. So you can see the back isn't the neatest. No one's ever going to see it, so I'm okay with it. And then to finish off my knots, I usually just grab a little bit near where I'm stitching, pick it up through the loop, pull through, and then I do that a couple times. And because no one's going to see this, I typically just cut the thread off. If you're working in an area where it's possible someone will see the back, I take my needle and I just run it through the felt a little bit and make sure it's not visible on the other side. You can't see any of it. So I'll run it through, pull the needle off. And then if you pull your thread tight and snip, your thread disappears. So you can see where I made the knot, and you can't see any of the thread poking out. So that's a little tip. And then in the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do the back stitch along these lines.